Hello, we're back again with you today. The next 6 months, there's me, Peter Cox, and of course, the person who it's all about, really. Well, no, it's not. It's about us, all of us together. But the person who wrote the book, Mark Thomas, How We've Been Screwed and How to Fight Back. Pleased to say you've sent in some interesting questions. Mark, are you ready for this?
Well, I don't know, but I'll do my best.
Of course you are. All right. First one comes from Heather. What advice should I be giving my children, given they face such a tough start to their working lives, given COVID, tuition fees, which we talked about yesterday, fewer, quote, proper jobs, affordable housing, stagnating salaries? It's all rather depressing, isn't it? What advice?
Well, this, of course, relates to the discussion we had yesterday about the deal which is on offer to millennials and Generation Z. Yeah. So I think there are two kinds of advice. There's the kind that people normally give, which is, if you like, personal advice that says, given the nature of the system, this is how you can best get yourself through it. And a lot of that relates to making sure your education is good, because that does correlate very well with success. Mm-hmm. And so making sure you're well educated gives you a good chance. But the other side to it, which is not the advice that people normally give, is fix the system, because it's no good. You know, if the top 1% get PhDs and do fine, but the bottom 90% don't, what we actually need is to fix the system in the way we talked about yesterday. And so young people, they should absolutely look after themselves, but they should also help fix the system, because they will be the ones living with this system for the next 40 or 50 or 60 years. So it's really important that they find the time and the energy somehow to fix that system.
Good. Okay, great. Thank you very much. This is quite a long one, actually, from Steve. Let me see if I can sort of paraphrase it slightly. He says, a lot of what you say is not new, probably because it's common sense. Unfettered capitalism, moving into dystopia. What solutions does Mark have in mind in particular? And yes, we haven't discussed this at all, so this will be interesting to know your views on. In particular, I'd love to hear what he thinks of so-called helicopter money and the idea we should all have a universal basic income.
Well, so helicopter money, we haven't explicitly talked about, but we have talked about the ability of government just to create money.
Yes.
So if we wanted a universal basic income, the idea that it's unaffordable is not true. That would not be the argument for it.
Okay.
Or the argument against it. The other argument is that it might act as a profound disincentive. If everybody got a basic income, nobody would bother to go to work. Now, that's been tested, actually. Several countries have done pilots, and Finland in particular has done some really large-scale, serious pilots, and they haven't found that. They've found enormous benefits to people. Some people stopped working in order to retrain so that they could get a better job, but that's not dropping out, that's actually stepping up, and that's a good thing. So I'm not an expert in it, but all I have seen suggests that in practice universal basic income works well, and therefore I'm cautiously supportive.
Okay, interesting, very interesting. Thank you very much, Steve. Johnny now. Johnny says, there are those in power globally driven by their own selfish greed who would be only too happy to help usher in a new age of Neofeudalism. Well, that's not really a question, it's an observation. And let me just add something on the top of that as well, because I do think actually that there's an element to this that neither of us are really qualified to talk about, but it is significant, and that is a psychological component of what's going on. I mean, they do say, don't they, that the people in the corner office, the people who are the bosses and the managers do tend more towards the psychopath end of the spectrum, and we do have kind of a system, don't we, Mark, that actually kind of encourages and rewards greedy behaviour.
Well, we do have a system that encourages and rewards greedy behavior. I have worked with a lot of senior executives, and I don't think the majority of them were psychopaths, and I don't think the majority of them at all would like to drive towards neo-feudalism. However, I think there's a much smaller group than the group of, let's say, FTSE chief executives. There's a much smaller group of people who do really like the sound of that Neofeudalism. They believe that they are superior to other people, that they have been plundered ever since the Second World War in order to fund other people's children's education, other people's healthcare, and that's gone on for long enough, and it's time we got rid of it.
Yes.
And so we actually have in the book, we have a chapter which looks at scenarios.
Yeah, I've seen this in the book.
And one of them is one of them is precisely neo-feudalism. So I reluctantly have to agree with this. There's a real risk that if we don't take action, we could end up with something which looks like neo-feudalism.
Okay, thank you very much, Johnny. Lucas is next here. It's big enough, I don't need to zoom in on that. Mark, how do you think Brexit, deal or no deal, it sounds like a bleeding TV show, is going to affect us in January? That's a very good question.
Well, it's a very, very good question. Of course, we haven't really got the faintest idea because we don't know if it's going to be deal or no deal. And if it's a deal, we don't know what's in the deal. So the government keeps telling people to prepare, but actually we don't know what to prepare for. Yeah. I don't even know whether it's conceivable that we could have an extension, because actually crashing out either with no deal or even with a hard Brexit in the middle of this COVID contraction would be, as we talked about, the leaked document that was looking at the reasonable worst case scenario. It's a pretty disastrous picture that is painted in that document. And certainly from the UK point of view, it would make sense to extend to avoid that catastrophe. And actually, probably from the point of view of the EU, it would make sense to extend, except that they might be fed up with us refusing to negotiate in any sensible way, and so they might just want to bring things to a head. Yes. I don't know, but I would hope that even though we have no right to an extension, because we turned down, not only did we refuse to request one, we said that if the EU requested it, we would turn it down. So we have neither legal nor moral right to request one, but I would hope that somebody would have enough common sense at least to consider it, which makes this question really difficult to answer. If we were to have an extension, then we still have an awful lot of problems, but we have time, if we had common sense brought to bear on those problems, to find some kind of resolution. If we crash out with no deal in January, then I think the answer is something like that reasonable worst case scenario that we discussed a couple of days ago.
Yeah. I'm very frightened about that, actually. Let's have a look at one from Janie. Janie says, where do you see us in 2024? So this is forecasting again, and you're right. I've been trying to twist your arm to forecasting.
Keep trying, don't you?
I do, but I'm not the only one either. Will all this be over?
You're not.
Will all this be over? Well, all this meaning all the crap we're in at the moment, COVID and just the general economic malaise. Do you think we're going to be any better off by then? Come on, put your cards on the table.
Cards on the table. I don't like making forecasts.
I know.
I think the idea that it will be all over and that we will be happily back on a more prosperous track by 2024 is unlikely. I don't think it's impossible, but it would really require a lot of policy U-turns in really big ways. I think medically, hopefully the COVID issue will have been resolved. Vaccines, as we know, there are lots of vaccine projects around the world, many of them looking very promising. At least one or two of them should have delivered something. And so we should be back to normal in that sense, I hope. But economically, we talked about this before, COVID has done damage to the economy already, what's called scarring. So that is, as we said the other day, that's businesses which have gone bankrupt. Now, if the business is bankrupt, it can't just sort of restart magically when the demand comes back. And so that's why it's called scarring. So you have a semi-permanent loss of capacity to produce the products and services that people need. And that takes time to recover from. So the more scarring that takes place, the less likely it is that things will be in any sense back to normal by 2024. And of course, we have a climate emergency which won't be over by then. So, if I take the optimistic scenario, what happens is we suddenly wake up and say, this is crazy. Here we are with multiple crises and we're mismanaging them all. We need to step back. We need to say we're going to protect the population, we're going to protect the economy, and we're going to protect the environment. And in the short term, effectively, we're going to spend whatever we need to, remembering what John Maynard Keynes said, which is that anything we can physically do, anything we can actually do, I think he said, we can afford. And that's right. The constraint is not lack of money. The constraint is, do we have the skills? Do we have the technology? Do we have the factories? Do we have the people? If the answer to all of those is yes, we can do things. We just need to make sure we do them. So let's take that positive, that can do attitude to it.
I totally agree.
And say, well, what do we do? So first of all, we go for lockdown and eliminate. We talked about the 4 strategies. We go for lockdown and eliminate. We eliminate the virus and then we keep it away once the vaccine is there. And that enables us to devote all our attention to the economy and the climate. Now, actually, there's a need to transform many sectors of the economy because by no means all, but quite a few of the sectors that we have are damaging to the environment. So if we don't transform them and we grow them, we're actually making the climate crisis worse. So we need to invest massively to transform all sorts of things, from the way that we heat our houses through to the way that we grow our food. And all of that requires skills and job creation. So if we said, okay, well, let's take that as being if you like, the key theme that we're going to work with, we're going to transform the economy and we're going to make sure we do it in a way that benefits the bottom 99% of the people. Then, by 2024, we might not be better off than we were last year, but we would be on a strong upward trend. And I think a great sense of national renewal and a great sense of optimism and a realistic view that the future was going to be better. And that's what I think we should be aiming for.
That's very, very positive. I mean, that's one of the great things, actually. I mean, on the one hand, your book, I mean, it's like a surgeon's scalpel, I have to say. It's not, it's not just opinion. It's just hard, incontrovertible evidence of what's going on. But you are resolutely optimistic. That bears on the next question, actually, from Michael. I agree with what Mark says, but how can we change anything in the short term? It's hard not to feel powerless. And I understand that feeling. I mean, I remember going on the very first anti-war Iraq march, almost 2 million people. Many of whom had never been on a march before in their lives. They came from, all the great sort of middle class areas of Britain, and they just felt, outraged. And after that, they felt very disempowered because it's really clear nobody was listening to them. So are people going to start listening to us now?
Well, I don't think they're going to start listening if we just go in crowds into the streets. So, I had a similar experiences in the last couple of years, joining very, very large groups, well over 1 million, in the streets, making a view very, very clear. And again, that was ignored. So I think we're not, those traditional approaches are not going to do it. I think we need to find new ways of applying pressure. And remember, there are 99% of the population, that's well over 60 million people, who will benefit from policies which are targeting the bottom 99% by definition. There are 650 people who make the laws. So 60 million people and 650 people. What we need to do is to find ways of those 650 not being those 60 million not being ignored by the 650, and that's one of the things that we're working on with the 99% organization. There are many different strands to it. We've got 5 key projects going, but if people are feeling they want to make a change, but they don't know how, please do join us. The 99% website is 99-percent.org. So 99%.org, or just
does the hyphen mean anything? Is the hyphen significant in any way?
Well, you won't get it if you miss it out. You won't.
Right, okay, it's very important.
Depends on your search engine.
Okay. Are they? I just want to ask you: are they joining, signing up for something that they didn't know about? Like, are they secretly joining, the Labour Party or I don't know, the Scots Nationalists or anything like that?
No, it's not party political. Obviously, what we've been talking about is political. Yeah. But it's not party political. So anyone who is either not a market fundamentalist on the right, so a one nation Tory, through
very
Greens
welcome.
and Liberal to centre left would all agree. If you were a communist, you wouldn't agree, because you would say, well, you're just putting a sticking plaster over capitalism. And if you're a market fundamentalist, you would say, well, you're not allowing capitalism to operate properly. So those two groups, those two extreme groups, would not find.
No, not for fringes. It's only the majority. That sounds all right.
It's only the majority of people that would be happier.
Yeah. Good.
And
all right.
Our values are, you can see them on the front page of the website. Everything we stand for, so people can look around,
good stuff.
See what they think. They can look at the projects. They can look at, we've got a little calendar so they can see what events are coming up. They don't have to commit to anything. They can just come along to 1 or 2 events and see what they think.
Good. Yes.
And then if they want to make a difference, then they can make a difference.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So 2 things, actually, Michael. 1, get the book. Get yourself properly informed, because these videos will inform you. But there's nothing like having a book, because that's hard evidence that's in your hands forever to keep. Who knows what's going to happen to videos on YouTube. And join the organisation. Now, we've got 1 more. No, we've got 2 more, actually. This is from Anwar. Another interesting question. What impact do you think the outcome of the US election is going to have on us? I think it's probably going to have a different impact to the one Mr. Johnson thought it was going to have a few weeks ago.
Well, I think that's probably right, because there were quite a few noises from the Conservative Party as it's currently constituted, sounding very supportive of Donald Trump and saying things like looking forward to a second term and that sort of thing. So it may well be that this is not the outcome that they had desired. I think it will be helpful for us. So already Biden has made it clear, for example, that he's going to take America back into the Paris Climate Accords, which means it's quite a pivot for the US from being at the extreme end on the climate denial side to going back into the international fold and looking to drive action on climate change. And that will put pressure on us to be serious in that area.
Good.
But more generally, I think Trump had this idea of America first, which was basically saying the international order is of no interest. I'm not interested in the UN. I'm not interested in the World Health Organization. I'm not interested in any kind of international cooperation. I'm only interested in things that I think are good in transactional terms for the US. And Biden, I think, is not in that camp, and that will. That strengthening of the international order also, I think, is a very good thing. And, hopefully it will send a signal to our government that that kind of Trump-like behavior is not welcomed anymore, whereas Trump was clearly supporting it and indeed christened Boris Britain's Trump. which he said was a good thing. He said people call him Britain Trump. So he felt he was getting a backing for a kind of Britain first attitude, which mirrored the America first attitude. I think now it will be the case that, if you want us to take you seriously, you've got to take the rest of the world seriously.
I find it very hard
healthy pressure.
I totally agree. I find it quite hard to take both Mr. Trump and Mr. Johnson seriously, despite the fact that they are dealing with very serious matters. We've got a final question here from Kevin. This is an interesting one too. Very, very good questions. Some people are saying that Cummings, that's Dominic Cummings, the unelected former, one would say, advisor to the British Prime Minister, has been initiating disaster capitalism to create chaos, breaking down regulations so there's a free market economy. Over the pond, Trump is also creating chaos. Well, yeah, he still seems to be, to try and evade potential legal action after he's thrown out of office. Thoughts?
So that's two slightly different questions there. The first one, I think, who knows what's people's motivation, but Philip Hammond had written that he felt that the Brexiters, obviously Cummings was a key player in the pro-Brexit campaign, were deliberately going to crash out with a no deal in order to remake Britain in a way that nobody had voted for. Wow. Now, assuming that Philip Hammond is correct, then that means effectively that this question is also correct, that this is effectively disaster capitalism. It's saying, yes, we don't mind upsetting the apple cart because we didn't like them piled on the cart. They were the way they were, and if they go on the ground first, and then we can put them in, we can reorder them in the way we want to. I think, yes, that is disaster capitalism. So if Philip Hammond is right, then the first part of this question, I think, is right. The second part is even harder to answer, though, because he's saying Trump is creating chaos to try and avoid or evade potential legal action after he's thrown out. Now, that seems very plausible to me, and I know some distinguished legal commentators have said similar things, that the rational justification for behaving like that is that you're basically trying to negotiate. You've got something valuable, which is your ability to cooperate or not during a transition, and you're not going to give that away. So it's a negotiating ploy with presumably a pardon at the end of it. That's very plausible. But whether that's what's in his mind, to be honest, reading what's in his mind, I don't know. So I think he's always been what people call a troll, hasn't he? He's always liked to, to put these things out there, outrageous statements. People lose track, really. I think in a way, it's a bit like being in an abusive relationship. It rapidly becomes normal, and you think, it's just him doing his usual thing. And it is not normal. It really isn't normal at all. No, it's absolutely not normal. And it's very difficult for a normal person to react to, because he says, as you say, all sorts of different things, but you don't know what he means. Is he saying it because he thinks it will have a good effect to say it right here, right now, but he has absolutely no intention of doing that? Is he saying it because he wants to see how people react, and if enough people cheer, then he might do it? Or is he actually seriously planning to do this, and he actually is just being truthful and saying what he means? And you have no idea. Extraordinary statements come out at a huge rate, and it's very, very hard to know what to make of them. And that, as you say, that's not normal, because if Angela Merkel says something, you may or may not agree with it, but you think that she's thought it through and you think that she means it. With him, that's not the case. You don't know how to interpret it. You don't know whether he means it. You don't know whether he's thought it through. So yes, very, very difficult to for a normal person to react to these things, and not, in fact, to be a bit destabilized by them. Yes,
I think we all feel destabilized at the very least. Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. Great stuff as always. Please, more questions, Mark. He'd love to answer more questions from you. And don't forget to join the 99% organisation. you've got the link. What's to get hold of Mark's book? 99.redhammer.tv will take you straight through to the buy page. And we very much look forward to being with you again tomorrow.